Hello and welcome to my same outfit that I wore last week. Exciting times! Apologize for the voice. I'm still getting over a little bit of a cold and I woke up with strong husky voice energy. My name is Rosga. This is the Midnight Reader. And today we are going to be doing an October wrap-up. And I read a lot of fun books and a couple of not so fun books. And we're going to talk about all of them. I actually read 7 books in the month of October, which is fantastic. That's pretty close to what I was reading pre-baby, so I'm very proud of myself. I read a couple of seasonal books, which I'm going to try to talk about first, and we're just going to dive right in the hopes of making this a reasonable length. So first, I read my first Riley Sager book, which, by the way, are none of you Riley Sager fans? Because I asked people to tell me their favorite Riley Sager, and I got exactly 0 replies. So are you all just better than me? Like, what's happening? I read Survive the Night by Riley Sager. It was my first dip into Sager's thriller writing. The plot follows Charlie, who is a college girl in the early 1990s, whose roommate is murdered by a serial killer on her college campus. The serial killer is helpfully dubbed the campus killer. Witty! Charlie is no stranger to trauma, as she was orphaned as a child due to a horrible accident that killed both her parents, and Charlie needs to get away from campus right now. So she accepts a ride from the campus ride board and gets into a car with a stranger. The stranger is named Josh, and as they drive, less and less of Josh's story adds up, and Charlie starts to believe that perhaps she got into the wrong car, maybe even a car with a killer. This was a solid 3-star book for me. Normally I'm a big sucker for any kind of thriller, okay? It's just popcorn, junk food for me. I just enjoy. But I think there was like such a strong theme of gaslighting that I just got really sick of it very fast. The main character started making impossibly bad choices. And I know that's a trope like in thrillers and horrors anyway, but it just got so irritating after a while. I was just really done with it. I also just don't like unreliable female narrator as a thriller trope. It's just not my thing. Charlie has mental health issues due to all the trauma and death she's experienced, and she has a sort of odd form of disassociation, which she refers to as movies in my mind, where she starts processing the world as though it is a film. And her perception of reality becomes very stylized, like noir or musical or Hitchcock. And she can hallucinate whole scenes that aren't actually happening. But it leads to these choices, okay? Like, Charlie has several extremely good opportunities to escape. And at one point, she's just about to get out of the car, and Josh goes, "Oh, you just went to the movies." Because of course she tells him about this, and Charlie goes, "Oh, well, I don't remember experiencing a hallucination. How odd. I guess I will stay in the car to find out more." Also, by the way, the expression movies in my mind and variations of that got extremely annoying. And I searched for it. It was mentioned 63 times in a pretty short book. Sometimes 2 to 3 times per page. Last complaint is, while there were some good twists and reveals, the big reveal was really badly plotted. If you have a smallish world and you only have 5 characters, and you reveal 4 of them to be dead, or you reveal their motivations as not a killer, and then you sit there for like 30 pages, as a reader you go, well, it's not you, or you. That dude, that guy right there, that guy right there is the killer. He just is. Because I'm out of characters. You just sit there flipping. He's the killer! Just like I knew 35 pages ago. Yep, that's the guy. Bad plotting in that respect. I will say that despite my many complaints, this was a very visual story for me. Like, when I go back and I think about the narrative of this book, it plays like a movie in my mind. I give it 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. If you like the unreliable female narrator trope, maybe this is for you. If you do, I would also recommend The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. Very similar vibes. Not my favorite. I have no quotes for this because I listened to it on audiobook, and I'm never getting that time back. Book number 2 was Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. What a joyous mistake this book was. So when I was bedbound with the plague, hi Plague! I was watching lots of booktube wrap-ups, which are my favorite type of booktube video, hence why most of my videos are wrap-ups of some sort. I really liked a particular synopsis, but because my brain was made of goo, I checked out that book, what I thought was the book that matched the synopsis, and it turns out no, that was not the book. The book I was thinking of was Legendborn. This book had come up in a wrap-up, and I cross-wired the two. So I picked up Sorcery of Thorns, and what a freaking happy mistake this was. Sometimes I think I'm done with YA and that I've just aged out of the genre, and I have to just keep my Katniss Everdeen memories to myself. Readers, I was overjoyed to learn that there was still YA out there that makes me happy. The story follows Elizabeth Scrivener, an orphan raised in the Great Library, where she trains to be a librarian. The brave soul is tasked with guarding the powerful beast-like books called grimoires. I don't care. Her trajectory is changed when the library is intact and she is framed for treason and murder. To clear her name and find the killer, she finds herself seeking help from the most unlikely of places. Cue sorcerer Nathaniel Thorne. And as any librarian knows, sorcerers and sorcery are forbidden, evil, and not to be trusted. Or are they? If you read Harry Potter growing up and you loved the restricted section of the library, you'll love this book. If you like awesome badass female leads who have bigger problems than does he like me, this is for you. If you thought Howl's Moving Castle had the cutest wizard crush, meet Nathaniel Thorne. If the idea of a demon who hates mess and makes an amazing cup of tea appeals to you, get in, loser, we're reading this book. What a happy, magical, demon, library-based delight. I seriously have been considering adding this to the permanent collection. I loved it that much. 5 whopping stars. I just want to be a librarian with a sword. Is that too much to ask? Quotes, never forget that knowledge is your greatest weapon. The more knowledge, the better, so you can hit the sorcerer over the head with it and give him a concussion. I haven't sacrificed virgins for my perfect cheekbones, if that's what you mean. Virgins in general have fewer magical properties than people tend to assume. Gold! Comedy gold! Alright, book 3 was Horrorstor by Grady Hendrix, and it's time to announce that Grady Hendrix and I are breaking up. We are not compatible. I'm not reading any more of his books. Now, telling you that might lead you to believe that this was a bad book, when in fact, it's just that I am not compatible with the horror genre. Not even the scintillating premise of IKEA-related humor could do it for me. So this is the story of Orsk, which is an American knockoff of IKEA. But something odd is happening at an Ohio branch of Orsk. More specifically, something definitely and super gross is happening. And it's up to a few brave and not so brave employees to figure out what's going on. Burglars, squatters, ghosts. The only way to find out is to stay in the store after hours. There were so many honestly funny parts to this. So many like working in retail jokes, so many cracks at IKEA. Like for example, he uses the fact that the layout of IKEA is meant to geographically bamboozle you as like a main part of the plot. There's also a scene where a character becomes entrapped in some of the furniture, and then the drama is undercut when the character remembers that it's essentially IKEA furniture and therefore not super structurally sound. Every chapter is headed by a furniture ad, which just get more and more deranged, which was truly excellent on audiobook. Only available at Orsk. The best part by far is the character Basil, who is the main manager and essentially married to the employee handbook. We all know this dude. Okay? If you've worked in retail, we've all met this man. And when shit really starts to go down, we see him bravely trying to beat back horror story nightmares with rules and regulations, all while trying to make the main character into management material. Everything about that was delightful. I laughed really hard. It was super fun. The rats, poop, torture, crazed hordes, and ectoplasm, not so much. I do think I get why people like Grady Hendrix. He has a real knack for writing compelling characters and making situations very humorous, but it's just not my genre. Horror's not for me. I'm letting it go, okay? I think I'd rather shop at IKEA. 3.5 stars, and a moment of silence for how good this cover is, because it looks like an IKEA catalog, and then on the little pictures you can see like people trapped inside them. Weren't you paying attention to where we were going? Amy asked. I was monologuing, Matt said. But this basically proves my point. If you lose your focus in the store for even a moment, you're lost. Get distracted, and the next thing you know, you're dropping $800 on a fiberboard RuneCade. Book 4 was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This was my pick for Victober, and I was shocked by how much I enjoyed this book. Jane Eyre is an orphan sent to live with her unloving aunt and cruel cousins. She has a fiercely independent streak and an intolerance for injustice, which gets her labeled troublesome and ungrateful. She is soon sent to grow up in a charitable girls' school, where she endures even more hardship like harsh punishment and lack of food and heat. She grows up hardened by the hand she is dealt, poor, plain, and alone in the world. She sets out as an adult as a governess and finds herself in a home that harbors the brooding Mr. Rochester, a gothic coldness, and an abundance of secrets. Those secrets threaten to destroy her character, forcing her to choose to stay or go. I thought I knew the ending to this book. I have a very clear memory as a child of watching like a PBS show that I thought was this book. Nope, it's some other random Victorian Gothic novel, I guess. that I now know the ending to. It wasn't for this. I did know the major twist because it didn't come out yesterday. I feel like most people know the twist of this book. But I still got really sucked into Jane's plight and her choices. I wasn't expecting to have such a strong female point of view, particularly as a narrator. She's very counter to the times she lived in. Like in Victorian England, to my knowledge, peak womanhood was being obedient and meek. And if you got dealt a shitty hand, you didn't protest, you just died and hoped that God rewarded you for your suffering. It was pretty bleak. Jane is not that. She's angry, she's unyielding, but she's also young and very unwise to the ways of the world. Also, I would like to say that Mr. Rochester is the biggest, most dramatic, game-playing man-baby who has ever existed, and he needs to take down his drama by about 17 duckin' notches. Very strong Beauty and the Beast vibes. I wasn't expecting there to be romance in this book. I don't know why. I guess I just didn't know that there was romance in this book. But I'm not mad at it. It wound up being the best part of the story. Conventionality is not morality. Self-righteousness is not religion. I was forgetting all his faults, for which I had once kept a sharp lookout. It had formerly been my endeavor to study all sides of his character, to take the bad with the good, and from the just weighing of both, to form an equitable judgment. Now I saw no bad. The sarcasm that had repelled, the harshness that had startled me once, were only like keen condiments in a choice dish. Their presence was pungent, but their absence would be felt as comparatively insipid. 5 stars. I am gonna keep this giant bind-up right here on my TBR shelf. I think I'm gonna keep it on the TBR shelf because, well, I did love Jane Eyre and I would 5-star that book, and I think I will probably read it again. That one I think probably deserves a home on my favorite shelf. A lot of favorites this month. I don't know if it's gonna be this bind-up, so I think I'm gonna try to read another one from this bind-up next year. And if I can keep finding favorites, then I'll keep the bind-up, and if I can't, I will move this giant chunker onto a new home. Book 5 was Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I wanted more Sorcery of Thorns magic fantasy, so I went with the standalone by Brandon Sanderson. I literally like everything he writes, so I was pretty sure that I would enjoy this read. The Mistborn series got me into adult fantasy, and some of my favorites are some of his less-known standalones, like Warbreaker and the Rithmatist. If you don't know Brandon Sanderson, he is the patron saint of nerds. He's an incredibly prolific fantasy writer who's known for his magic systems and world building, and incredibly plotted novels. He also, for the most part, manages to write all the books other than the ones that I need him to write right now. Sanderson, where the hell is book 2 of The Rithmatist? I've been waiting for that for almost 5 years. Where is it, Brandon? So instead of continuing a series that I have waited for literally years, he wrote this book instead during the pandemic. He also wrote a whole bunch of other books that were not in his continuing series. He has a hard time sticking to his to be written. So instead of writing that book, he wrote Tress of the Emerald Sea, which from here on out I'm going to be referring to by its acronym of TOTES, because if you have an acronym of TOTES, you should use an acronym of TOTES. TOTES follows the window washer Tress, who has a penchant for cup collecting and lives on an isolated island in the Emerald Sea. When her best friend and possibly true love named Charlie is taken by his father across the seas to find himself a bride, Tress is suitably heartbroken. But when his father returns without Charlie and instead has a new, less disappointing replacement son with him, it's up to Tress to go find and save Charlie. Apparently this book was born from a comment that Sanderson's wife made while they were watching the movie The Princess Bride, and the comment was, what if Buttercup had not immediately given up Wesley for dead, which happens in the first 5 minutes of the movie. What if instead she had went looking for Wesley? And that's what this book is. Tress gets the chance to cross the seas, tangle with pirates, dragons, and sorceresses, and go find and save Charlie. Every time I read one of his books, I'm reminded of how much I enjoy how he writes female characters. Her internal monologue doesn't follow this incessant circular pattern that I find in romance fantasy, panic, horny, dumb, set on repeat. She's smart, she makes rational choices, and makes reasonable mistakes. She gets the same moments of bravery and fun that you would find in a novel that's centered around a male lead, and I really enjoyed the magic system as well of this world. Essentially, the seas aren't made of water, they're made of spores, and all those seas have different colors of spores, and all the different spores have different properties when exposed to water, often with deadly effect. And those can include things like growing vines incredibly rapidly, growing crystals, or having an explosive burst of air. Sanderson always pays attention to the little details, like what if a spore hit your eye? Your eyes are wet. Bodies are bags of water. What happens when you bleed? I just really enjoyed that entire boar-related magic thing. I thought it was really cool. The reason why Sanderson is the patron saint of nerds is he also weaves lots of little details from multiple novels into his book. So like most of all his books are related in the Cosmere, as he refers to it. So if you're really, really nerdy, you can pick up on little tiny cues, people or creatures that have come from other novels. I caught one of them this time, which I was extremely proud of. I did catch the big twist for this book pretty early, and that is, I think, because it reads a little bit younger, like it has more of like a YA adventure story sort of feel, but I didn't care that I got the twist early. It didn't lessen my enjoyment of the book at all. I even forgot that I was mad he didn't write a different book. I was ensorcelled by Brandon Sanderson, as most of us are. It might be said that Tress had a way with words, in that her words tended to get in her way. Men often described the girl as having hair the color of wheat, others called it the color of caramel, or occasionally the color of honey. The girl wondered why men so often used food to describe women's features. There was a hunger in such men that was best avoided. Book 6 was The Collected Regrets of Clover by Mikki. This is a contemporary fiction that I've seen making the rounds on BookTube, and it was a pure mood read choice plucking from my library moment. Our main character, Clover, has never been a stranger to death. From watching her kindergarten teacher die of a heart attack, to the accident that killed both her parents, to the loss of her beloved grandfather, she walks closer to death than most people are comfortable with. She makes her comfort with death into her career, and she becomes what's called a death doula. Much as birth doulas comfort and witness mother and child through birth, Clover comforts and witnesses people as they die, helping them pass as peacefully as possible. Her own life, however, is a bit of a mess. With so much time devoted to the dying, she hasn't done much living herself. I found this to be such a lovely, quiet, hopeful little book. As much a love letter to NYC as it is to those who walk close to death for a living. I was an ICU nurse for a long time. I have watched many people die, and there are passages in here that just got me. That just got the quiet compassion of holding someone's hand while they take their last breaths. The way it feels different in a room right before someone passes. The isolation of being so familiar with death that it makes people profoundly uncomfortable. Whoever she talked to for her research in this book, they just get it. It is so true to my lived experience that it touched an open nerve that I didn't know was open. Like, there were passages in this that just stirred like pieces of grief that I thought I had put away. I really, really enjoyed it. This is a debut novel, and you can tell in places because the pacing is slightly off. It gets quite slow in the middle and then a little bit rushed at the end. But I am honestly really excited to see what she might write next. There was a trueness to this that felt so real to my lived experience that I just enjoyed it, even when it was slow, even when it was too fast, even when the plot got a little bogged down. Definitely for fans of people who like the awkward outsider as a genre, so maybe like Eleanor Oliphant. If you liked that book, you might like this one. I give it like somewhere in the like 4.5 star range. It's tempting to try to fix it, to cheer them up. But the truth is, you'll never find the right thing to say, because the right thing doesn't exist. The fact that you're there and present says so much more. And finally, for my last book of October, book number 7 was Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. This is a nonfiction bestseller about a young man from a rich East Coast suburb who in 1992 hitchhiked to Alaska, walked into the wilderness, and starved. His name was Christopher McCandless, and his story, captured first by Krakauer in Outside Magazine, then this novel, and eventually a feature film, captivated a certain audience for the mystery of his desperation to reach the wilderness. I was born and raised in Alaska, so I had some pretty strong feelings about McCandless going into the book. I made a whole book review on it, so I'm not going to go into it in detail. Please watch that if you're interested. I'll link it below. All I will say is that I now, having read the book, I pity the man himself, but I continue to dislike in storytelling that made him a saint, because the sanctifying of Chris McCandless drew countless others to make their own dangerous pilgrimages to a bus in the middle of the Alaskan wild, drawing the need for countless rescues, near-death experiences, and several actual death experiences. I give this book 4 internally conflicted stars because while it is exceedingly well written, I have very conflicted feelings about it, which I go into in my book review. And I'm not going to go into here. I got a little depressing, I think. So those are all the books that I read in the month of October. I read 7, which was pretty awesome. I was pretty happy about that. By the way, in my September wrap-up, I had so many people who wrote really nice comments being like, wow, I've never noticed before how good you are at summarizing books and reviewing books. And that's because for that video, unlike most other videos, I took notes. I have heard your compliments, and I took notes for this video as well, so hopefully the reviews were of the same caliber. I can't promise to do them all the time, because sometimes life gets in the way, and you're gonna get a review that's like, I liked it, I guess. But yeah, that was the month of October. For November, I'm going to be doing the Bloom and Readathon. I don't have a TBR planned. My plan is to just pick up whatever book strikes me in the month of November and see if I can get them to fit on the bingo board. If you haven't heard of the Bloom and Readathon, it's a month-long readathon for the month of November hosted by Allison Pages. A link before, a link below. I did it last year, I'll link that video too. It's really fun. It's a very chill readathon because it feels very low stakes. And I'm just going to try to see how many books fit the prompts on the bingo board, and hopefully I'll get a bingo. That's the goal. I hope as always that this video finds you well, that you are enjoying some good reads and having a good month of November. And hopefully I'll be able to keep the train going on this weekly video routine for a little while. As always, thanks for liking and subscribing to my little channel. It helps a lot and it makes it fun for me to know that people are watching some of my silly book reviews. So I'll see you all next week. Bye!